At the very top of the food chain, there are animals that live without natural predators, shaping entire ecosystems simply by existing. Right now, in forests, oceans, and open plains, these hunters are quietly influencing the balance of life, not just through what they catch, but through the presence they carry across their environment. These are apex predators. Tonight, we'll explore what defines them, how they shape the world around them, and why their role is far more important than it first appears. One calm fact at a time. You can simply listen, and if you drift away, the story will continue. And if you enjoy calm, immersive science like this, consider subscribing to Deep Sleep Discoveries, where each video is designed to help you relax, learn, and gently drift into rest. So let everything soften, and we'll begin. An apex predator is any animal that sits at the very top of its food chain, with no natural predators hunting it in its adult form. The word carries a kind of quiet grandeur. To be at the apex is to be at the summit, the place where the long climb of the food web finally rests. These animals are not merely large or powerful. They occupy a role, a function, a place in the living architecture of their world that nothing else can fill. Their presence is a kind of anchor, holding the whole system steady beneath them, the way a single stone at the peak of an arch keeps everything below from falling. The word apex comes from Latin, meaning the tip or the summit, the highest point of something. To call a creature an apex predator is to say that it lives at the very peak of its world, that the long pyramid of life beneath it, plants, insects, small animals, mid-level hunters, all rises toward it like a mountain rising toward the sky. There is something almost architectural in that image, something cathedral-like, as if the ecosystem were a vast and intricate structure built around the animal at its crown. Every layer below exists in relation to that summit, shaped by it, kept in place by it, the way lower notes in a chord exist in relation to the one that sounds highest. Apex predators make up less than 5% of the total animal biomass in any given ecosystem, and yet they regulate the other 95%. Think of that quiet arithmetic for a moment. A tiny fraction of the living weight of a forest or an ocean holds the rest in balance, the way a single hand can steady a spinning top. They do not need to be everywhere to be felt. Their presence, their hunger, their movement, their shadow passing through the trees, reaches into every layer of the system below them, shaping behavior, redirecting grazing, keeping populations from swelling beyond what the land can hold. Apex predators are found in every major biome on Earth, in the deep ocean and the shallow reef, in the boreal forest and the open savanna, in the frozen tundra and the sun-scorched desert, in freshwater rivers and ancient grasslands. Wherever life has taken root and grown into a web, something has risen to the top of it. This is one of nature's most consistent patterns, not an accident, but a design, repeated across every landscape on the planet, as if the living world understands that it needs a guardian at its crown. No matter how different the setting, the role remains the same: to hold the balance, to keep the web from unraveling. Not all apex predators are large. The humble dragonfly is the apex predator of freshwater pond ecosystems, with a hunting success rate above 95%, higher than any lion, any wolf, any great white shark. It is ancient and small and precise, a creature that has been hunting at the surface of still water for 300 million years. It hunts mosquitoes, gnats, and small flies with a kind of effortless mastery, adjusting its flight path mid-air to intercept prey that has not yet realized it is being followed. In the quiet world of a pond, the dragonfly is the summit, glittering, swift, and absolutely sovereign over everything below it. Apex predators are also called top predators or alpha predators in ecological science. Each name a slightly different way of saying the same luminous thing. They are the alpha, the origin point of the food web's authority. They are the top, the ceiling above which nothing climbs. In some older texts, they are called dominant carnivores, a phrase that carries the weight of something both earned and ancient. Scientists use these terms interchangeably, but in each one lives the same idea, that at the crown of every living system, something waits, patient, powerful, and quietly essential to the health of everything beneath it. A single apex predator can influence the behavior, population, and even the physical health of dozens of species it never directly encounters. This is one of ecology's most astonishing truths, that the presence of one animal can ripple outward through an entire system, touching species it has never seen, shaping lives it has never threatened. A wolf in the forest does not only change the deer it hunts, it changes where the deer graze, how long they linger near the river, which plants grow tall and which ones are grazed to the root. Through that chain of consequences, the wolf shapes the songbird's habitat, the beaver's territory, the very path of a stream through a valley. Some apex predators like wolves and lions are also called keystone species, a term borrowed from architecture describing the single stone at the top of an arch that holds every other stone in place. Remove the keystone and the arch collapses, not gradually but all at once. These animals are not just important to their ecosystems, they are structurally essential, the living center around which everything else arranges itself. Their presence is so disproportionately powerful that their absence does not merely leave a gap. It begins a cascade, a slow unraveling of every thread they once held taut, a silencing of the many voices their presence had kept in tune. The great white shark is one of the oldest apex predators on Earth. Its lineage stretches back more than 16 million years, long before humans walked upright, long before the first forests grew tall on land. It has watched the world change around it with a kind of geological patience, adapting slowly, surviving everything: ice ages, mass extinctions, the rising and falling of entire oceans. To encounter a great white shark is to encounter something that has been perfected by time, a creature shaped by 16 million years of pressure and pruning into something that fits its world the way a key fits a lock, exactly, completely, without a single unnecessary part. Sharks as a group have been on Earth for roughly 450 million years, predating the dinosaurs by more than 200 million years. They were here before the first trees, before the first flowers, before the first bird lifted itself from the ground on borrowed wings. They have outlasted 5 mass extinction events, those deep and terrible silences when most of life on Earth went dark. Through all of it, the shark persisted, refined and patient, like a sentence the ocean keeps rewriting until it gets the language exactly right. They are not relics. They are proof that some designs once found do not need to be improved. Orcas, or killer whales, are the true apex predators of the ocean. No animal hunts them as adults, and they have been documented hunting great white sharks, blue whales, and every other large marine creature on Earth. They live in complex family groups, communicate in dialects, grieve their dead, and teach their young. They are not merely powerful, they are intelligent in a way that feels almost reflective, as if the ocean had decided to give consciousness to something vast and gave it a song. In every ocean on the planet, from tropical seas to polar ice, the orca moves as an authority, ancient, familial, and without equal. When orcas enter an area, great white sharks have been documented fleeing and not returning for months, a behavior researchers call competitive displacement. It is a profound thing to consider, that an animal of such legendary power, one that has inspired mythology and nightmares across cultures, will quietly leave when something larger and more organized arrives. The shark does not fight. It simply goes, slipping into deeper water beyond the reach of those coordinated, purposeful minds. In this, there is a lesson the ocean keeps teaching, that intelligence and cooperation can move the world in ways that raw strength alone cannot. Sperm whales are apex predators of the deep ocean, diving to depths of over 3,000 feet in complete darkness to hunt giant squid, creatures that can grow as large as school buses. The sperm whale descends into a world of crushing pressure and absolute night, navigating by sound alone, its enormous head filled with a waxy substance called spermaceti that helps it focus and project the clicks it uses to find prey. There, in the deepest silence the world contains, a battle takes place that no human eye has ever witnessed. 2 giants of the abyss coiled together in the dark, each one the other's equal at the bottom of the world. The oceanic food web depends on apex predators like sharks to keep mid-level predators, rays, large fish, groupers, from overpopulating and depleting the smaller sea life beneath them. Without sharks, these mid-level species multiply beyond what the reef can sustain. They consume smaller fish, crustaceans, and invertebrates at rates the system cannot replenish, hollowing out the reef from the inside until it falls quiet. The shark does not merely hunt. It keeps the concert in tune, controlling which instruments play and for how long, ensuring that no single voice overwhelms the rest. Its presence is not violence. It is a kind of music. Tiger sharks keep sea turtle populations in balance. Without them, turtles would overgraze the seagrass beds that line shallow coastal waters, destroying a habitat that supports thousands of marine species, from seahorses to manatees to juvenile fish of every kind. The seagrass meadow is one of the ocean's most productive ecosystems, a nursery for the sea. And it is the tiger shark, moving slowly through warm water with its striped flanks and ancient gaze, that keeps the turtle from consuming it entirely. The shark never touches the seagrass. And yet, without it, the seagrass would disappear. This is the quiet logic of a living world. Sharks are responsible for what scientists call the landscape of fear, a concept describing how prey animals change their behavior simply because a predator might be nearby, even if it never appears. Sea creatures avoid certain feeding areas, spend less time in the open, move more cautiously through the water, all because of the possibility of a shark. This redistribution of behavior spreads grazing pressure across larger areas of the ocean, preventing any single patch of reef or seagrass from being stripped bare. The shark does not need to hunt to shape its world. It needs only to exist. Its shadow alone is enough to keep the sea in balance. The blue whale is the largest animal ever to have lived on Earth, and in adulthood, nothing hunts it. It occupies a singular position in its food chain, one that ecologists describe with careful nuance. Though it feeds on krill, which sit near the very bottom of the oceanic pyramid, it sits at the top of its own particular chain, a chain of such scale that it defies easy categories. Most definitions reserve the term apex predator for animals that consume other predators, so the blue whale is more precisely called a top predator of its feeding chain. Whatever the classification, it moves through the sea like a living continent, vast and untouchable, a creature that exists at a scale the imagination can barely hold. Orcapods have distinct cultures. Different family groups hunt in entirely different ways, and they pass these techniques down through generations like a tradition, a form of inherited knowledge that functions almost like language. Some pods specialize in fish, others hunt marine mammals. Some beach themselves deliberately to seize sea lions from the shore, a technique so dangerous and precise that mothers spend years teaching their calves to do it correctly. This cultural transmission of knowledge is extraordinarily rare in the animal world. It means that each pod of orcas carries its own history, its own accumulated wisdom, its own way of reading and moving through the sea. They are not just predators, they are inheritors. Leopard seals are the apex predators of Antarctic coastal waters, sleek, powerful, and utterly at home in a world of ice and cold. They hunt penguins at the water's edge, waiting beneath the surface with a patience that feels almost meditative, then surging upward with a speed that belies their size. They also hunt fish and squid, and occasionally smaller seals, ranging freely through waters so cold that most life cannot survive them. The leopard seal does not hurry. It inhabits its frozen world with the calm authority of something that has nothing to fear, a sovereign of ice and silence, shaped by millions of years into precisely the creature its world required. The ocean's apex predators are critical to carbon cycling. When large marine animals die, their bodies slowly sink toward the ocean floor in a process researchers call the biological pump, carrying with them the carbon they have accumulated through a lifetime of feeding. That carbon settles into the sediment of the deep sea, where it can be locked away for centuries or even millennia, removed from the atmosphere in a quiet, patient transaction between the living and the geological. Apex predators, because of their size, carry enormous carbon loads. Their deaths are not merely endings, they are gifts to the deep, vast, slow, and essential to the long breathing of the planet. The African lion is the only truly social apex predator among the big cats, living in cooperative family groups called prides that can number from a handful of animals to several dozen. They hunt together, rest together, raise their young together in a web of relationships that is complex and tender and fierce all at once. The females do most of the hunting, working in coordinated groups to pursue prey across the open savanna. The males guard the territory, their roars carrying miles through the night air, a sound so deep it seems to come from the earth itself. In the lion, power and belonging are not opposites, they are the same thing. Lions regulate herbivore populations across the African savanna. Without them, animals like wildebeest and zebra would overgraze the grassland, stripping it of the vegetation that holds the soil in place and sustains countless other species. The lion's hunger is the savanna's gardener, thinning the herds, keeping the grazers moving, ensuring that no single patch of land is consumed entirely. The wildebeest does not know this. It knows only the lion's shadow and the need to run, but the grass knows it in its way, growing tall again where the herds have passed, reaching toward the sun in the brief reprieve that the predator's presence makes possible. The Siberian tiger is the largest wild cat on Earth, capable of taking down prey 4 times its own size: elk, wild boar, even young bears. It moves through the forests of the Russian Far East with a silence that seems impossible for something so large, its striped coat dissolving into the pattern of light and shadow between the trees. It hunts alone with a patience that can stretch for hours, reading the forest the way a musician reads a score, listening for the note that is slightly out of place, the movement that does not belong. And when it moves completely, every part of its enormous body committed to a single, precise intention. Wolves are one of the most extensively studied apex predators in history, with research in Yellowstone National Park spanning more than 60 years and generating thousands of scientific papers. Biologists have followed individual wolves through their entire lives, mapped the territories of hundreds of packs, documented hunting strategies and social hierarchies, and the ways grief moves through a pack when a member is lost. In all of that watching, one truth has emerged more clearly than any other: that the wolf is not merely an animal living in an ecosystem. It is a force that shapes the ecosystem, a presence whose influence extends far beyond the reach of its paws and its teeth. The reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone National Park in 1995 is one of the most celebrated ecological events in the history of modern conservation, a decision that transformed not just the park but the scientific understanding of what a single species can do when it is restored to its rightful place. 14 wolves were brought from Canada and released into a park that had not heard a wolf howl in more than 70 years. What happened next astonished the world. Not slowly, not after generations, but within years. The park began to change in ways that reached into every corner of its landscape, as if something that had been holding its breath finally exhaled. Before wolves returned to Yellowstone, elk had overpopulated the park, grazing without caution along the riverbanks where willows and aspens grew. Those trees were stripped bare season after season, their roots loosened, their trunks thinned, until the banks they held began to crumble into the river. Without roots to anchor the soil, the rivers wandered and eroded, their channels widening and shallowing, their banks collapsing into mud. The park was not dying, but it was diminished, a chord with one of its essential notes missing, still recognizable but no longer quite whole. The silence where wolves had been was not just an absence of sound, it was an absence of balance. After wolves returned to Yellowstone, elk began avoiding the open riverbanks where they had grazed freely for decades. In the shelter of that behavioral shift, willows and aspens grew back. Songbirds returned to nest in the new growth. Beavers, who depend on willows for food and dam building, came back and built ponds that created wetland habitats for fish, amphibians, and waterfowl. The rivers, stabilized by returning root systems, narrowed and deepened, their channels becoming clearer and cooler. Scientists call this a trophic cascade, a chain reaction of ecological change triggered by the return of a single species. The wolves did not change the rivers. They changed the deer, and the deer changed everything else. The polar bear is the apex predator of the Arctic, a world of ice and cold so extreme that only the most precisely adapted life can survive it. It hunts seals at breathing holes in the ice, waiting with extraordinary patience for a moment of surfacing, a breath of open air. It swims for miles between ice floes with a calm that seems borrowed from the sea itself. The polar bear's entire existence is tuned to the rhythm of Arctic seasons, the freeze and the thaw, the advance and retreat of ice. It is an animal that lives in perfect alignment with its world, and it is now watching that world change faster than any adaptation can answer. Jaguars are the apex predators of the Amazon rainforest, and they are considered a keystone species. Their presence keeps populations of caiman, capybara, deer, and peccaries in check, preventing any one species from consuming more than the forest can regenerate. The jaguar moves through the Amazon like something the forest dreamed, spotted, muscular, and utterly silent on the forest floor. It is a powerful swimmer, one of the few cats that actively hunts in water, and its territory can span hundreds of miles of unbroken green. Where the jaguar lives, the rainforest is healthy. Its footprint is not a wound on the land, it is a signature of abundance. The snow leopard moves through the mountain ecosystems of Central Asia like a grey ghost, almost never seen, rarely photographed in the wild, its existence known more through tracks in snow and the distant sight of a long, thick tail disappearing behind a ridge. It hunts blue sheep and ibex across steep terrain at elevations where the air is thin and the wind never fully stops. By keeping these herds moving and thinned, it prevents the overgrazing of alpine meadows, fragile, high-altitude grasslands that anchor the soil and feed the rivers that begin as snowmelt far below. The snow leopard rarely sees a human, and yet it shapes the water that billions of people drink. African wild dogs have the highest hunting success rate of any large predator on Earth. Up to 80% of their chases end in a kill, a figure that far surpasses lions at roughly 30% and cheetahs at around 50%. They do not rely on ambush or individual strength. They rely on endurance, coordination, and communication. Long, flowing chases across open ground where the pack works as a single organism, passing the lead between individuals, conserving energy across miles of pursuit. They communicate with a soft, chirping sound unlike anything else a predator makes, and in that gentle exchange of calls, they coordinate one of the most efficient hunting systems the natural world has ever produced. The wolverine is the apex predator of boreal forests and tundra, a compact, barrel-shaped animal that looks like the cross between a bear and a weasel and behaves like neither. Pound for pound, it is one of the most powerful predators alive, capable of taking down prey many times its own size and driving bears and mountain lions from their kills. It ranges over territories that can exceed 500 square miles, moving through deep snow with a tireless, loping gait, navigating winter landscapes that most animals avoid entirely. The wolverine is not charismatic in the way of wolves or lions. It does not invite affection, but in the cold places of the world, it is sovereign. Brown bears are apex predators and something more. They are ecosystem engineers, animals whose behavior reshapes the physical world around them. Every autumn, brown bears gather at rivers to catch salmon, consuming hundreds of fish over the course of weeks to build the fat reserves that will carry them through winter. But they do not eat everything where they stand. They drag salmon carcasses inland, sometimes hundreds of meters, and leave them scattered through the forest floor. Those carcasses decompose and release the nitrogen and phosphorus of the deep sea into the soil of old-growth trees. Bears fertilize the forest with the ocean. They carry the sea inland on their shoulders, and the trees remember it for centuries. The harpy eagle is the apex predator of the Amazon canopy, a bird so large and powerful that it seems to belong to mythology as much as to ornithology. It hunts sloths and monkeys directly from tree branches, moving through the dense upper forest with a maneuverability that seems impossible for something its size. It has broad, rounded wings designed for navigating the narrow corridors between trees, and facial feathers arranged in a disc that collects sound the way a satellite dish collects signals, funneling the rustle of a sloth's claws into information it can act upon. In the cathedral of the Amazon canopy, the harpy eagle moves like a presence the forest itself recognizes. The harpy eagle has talons larger than the claws of a grizzly bear, curved, black, and built to lock around prey with a grip that does not release. Each talon can reach 5 inches in length, and the crushing force behind them is enough to penetrate bone. When a harpy eagle closes its feet around a sloth or a monkey, the result is nearly instantaneous. There is no struggle long enough to matter. The eagle carries its prey back to the nest in silence, its enormous wings spreading wide against the canopy sky, returning to the hidden place where its young wait, patient, ancient, and already learning the shape of what the world is asking them to become. The golden eagle is one of the most widespread aerial apex predators on Earth, found across North America, Europe, Asia, and North Africa, a bird that has watched human civilization rise and fall from the thermals above every continent but two. It hunts rabbits, ground squirrels, prairie dogs, and occasionally deer fawns, riding updrafts with a patience that makes soaring look like rest. For thousands of years, humans have trained golden eagles to hunt alongside them, and in the mountains of Central Asia, the tradition continues. Eagles and humans working together across high ridges in a partnership so old it has grown its own mythology, its own ceremonies, its own songs. Bald eagles regulate fish populations in rivers and lakes across North America. Their hunting keeps certain fish species from dominating and eliminating smaller aquatic life below them. They gather in great numbers at rivers where salmon run, standing at the water's edge or dropping from the sky in precise, controlled dives, pulling fish from the current with their talons. Like the brown bear, they carry salmon from the river into the surrounding forest, and in doing so, they distribute marine nutrients into terrestrial soil, feeding trees and shrubs that have no direct connection to the sea. The eagle's hunger nourishes things it will never visit, feeds lives it will never know. The Nile crocodile is the apex predator of African river systems, and its presence controls the movement of wildebeest, antelope, zebra, and every other mammal that must cross the great rivers of the continent. At the Mara River crossing during the annual wildebeest migration, the crocodiles wait in the murk of green water, barely visible, barely moving, entirely patient. The wildebeest know they are there. The crossing is a moment of collective terror. Thousands of animals standing at the bank, the pressure of the herd behind them, the unseen weight of ancient hunger before them. They cross anyway because the grass is on the other side, because life requires crossing. Nile crocodiles recycle nutrients by consuming carcasses and organic waste that would otherwise stagnate in river systems, acting as a kind of living sanitation, keeping the water from becoming a place of disease and decay. Their digestive systems are extraordinarily powerful, capable of breaking down bone, hide, and tissue that would take weeks to decompose otherwise. In this way, the crocodile is not only a predator but a processor, returning the energy of dead things to the water column, making it available again to the algae and invertebrates and fish that begin the web anew. The crocodile does not only take life, it returns it in the slow, patient chemistry of digestion. Alligators in the American Southeast create deep depressions in wetlands simply by moving through the same areas repeatedly, their heavy bodies pressing the mud into hollows, structures called gator holes that become critical refuges during the dry season. When the surrounding wetland dries out, fish, turtles, birds, and amphibians crowd into the gator holes, the only places where water remains. The alligator does not intend to create these refuges. It is simply being itself, moving through the landscape in its unhurried way, and in being itself it builds something that the rest of the ecosystem depends on, a gift that costs the giver nothing and means everything to those who shelter in its hollow. The Andean condor soars above the mountains of South America on wings that can stretch nearly 11 feet from tip to tip, one of the largest wingspans of any living bird. It is not a predator in the strict biological sense. It does not kill its prey, but feeds on the carcasses of animals that are already dead. In this way, it functions as a top scavenger, sitting at the summit of the energy cycle rather than the food chain, consuming what has been left behind and returning its nutrients to the soil. Without the condor, carcasses would accumulate and rot, spreading disease through mountain and coastal ecosystems. The condor does not take life, it completes it. The giant river otter of South America is one of the rarest and most charismatic apex predators on Earth, a creature that hunts in coordinated family groups, communicating constantly with a repertoire of sounds that researchers have described as almost conversational. It controls fish populations in the rivers of the Amazon basin, keeping species like piranhas and catfish from dominating the waterways entirely. It is remarkably bold for its size, willing to confront caimans and anacondas in defense of its territory and young. A family of giant river otters is a loud, joyful, fiercely bonded thing, living proof that apex predation and tenderness can exist in the same body, the same home, the same rushing river. A trophic cascade is a chain reaction of ecological changes that begins when an apex predator is added to or removed from an ecosystem. A sequence of consequences that moves down through the layers of the food web the way a vibration moves through a taut string, touching every level before it finally stills. The predator affects the animals it hunts. Those animals, changed in behavior or number, affect the plants they consume. The plants, altered in abundance or distribution, change the soil, the water, the microorganisms, the insects. By the time the cascade reaches the bottom, the entire living architecture of the ecosystem has shifted, all because of something that happened at the top. The word trophic comes from the Greek trophy, meaning nourishment. So a trophic cascade is literally a cascade of nourishment, a waterfall of energy and sustenance flowing through every level of a living system, touching each one as it passes. The metaphor is apt because nourishment is exactly what moves through a food web. Energy harvested from the sun by plants, passed to the animal that eats the plant, passed again to the animal that eats that one, rising through the levels in a long, generous chain of transformation. The apex predator at the top does not merely consume, it governs the flow of that nourishment through every layer below it, keeping it moving, keeping it whole. When sea otters were hunted to near extinction in the 19th century for their extraordinarily dense fur, sea urchin populations along the Pacific coast exploded without any predator to hold them in check. The urchins, freed from the pressure of being eaten, consumed kelp at a rate the forest could not survive. Vast underwater forests that had stood for centuries, home to hundreds of species of fish, invertebrates, and marine mammals, collapsed into what ecologists call urchin barrens. Stretches of bare rock where nothing grew, where the water fell silent, where the dense, waving canopy of kelp had been reduced to nothing but stubble and empty water and the clicking of urchin spines. When sea otters were reintroduced to sections of the Pacific coast through conservation programs, sea urchin populations fell as the otters resumed eating them. Kelp forests recovered, slowly at first, then in great sweeping curtains of green and gold, reaching again toward the light at the surface. Fish returned, seabirds returned. Bald eagles, who feed on the fish that shelter in kelp, increased in number along stretches of coastline that had been ecologically emptied just decades before. The otter did not know it was healing the sea. It was simply hunting, simply feeding its young, simply being the thing it had always been, the thread in a tapestry whose removal had unraveled a world. The collapse and recovery of the Pacific kelp forest, driven by the absence and return of sea otters, is one of the most clearly documented and widely cited examples of a trophic cascade in the history of ecology. It transformed scientific understanding of how interconnected living systems truly are, demonstrating that the loss of a single small mammal could hollow out an entire marine ecosystem, and that its return could restore it within a generation. The lesson the otter taught the world is not a complicated one. It is, in fact, very simple. Everything is connected. The thread you pull on does not merely move, it moves everything it is attached to. Trophic cascades have been documented in every type of ecosystem on Earth. In oceans where the removal of sharks altered the behavior of rays and devastated seagrass, in rivers where the loss of large predatory fish changed the structure of invertebrate communities, in forests where the elimination of wolves transformed the vegetation along stream beds, in grasslands where the removal of lions allowed herbivore populations to strip the land bare. The pattern repeats itself across biomes, across continents, across the full variety of the living world. Wherever a top predator has been removed, the cascade has followed, patient and inevitable, as if the web of life is always waiting to show what it loses when its crown is taken away. The removal of sharks from ocean ecosystems causes a trophic cascade that eventually reduces fish populations, the very opposite of what shark hunters often believed would happen. The logic seems counterintuitive. Remove the thing that eats fish, and there should be more fish. But the predator was not merely consuming fish. It was controlling the mid-level predators that consumed far more fish than any single shark ever could. With the shark gone, those mid-level populations swell, and the fish beneath them disappear faster than before. The ocean does not operate by simple addition and subtraction. It operates by the intricate arithmetic of interdependence, and those who reduce it to a simpler math always find the answer comes out wrong. Scientists study trophic cascades to understand how to restore degraded ecosystems around the world, to find the threads that, if restored, might begin pulling the rest of the web back into wholeness. The field of restoration ecology has been transformed by this understanding. Instead of replanting vegetation or restocking fish or manually reducing invasive species, ecologists now ask a different question. What was at the top? What is missing from the crown? Because the crown, when restored, often does the work of restoration itself, releasing forces that move through the system, rebalancing it from the inside out, the way a healer might address the source of an illness rather than only its symptoms. The loss of a single apex predator species from a region can cause measurable changes in plant life, soil composition, and water quality within just a few years. Not decades, not generations, but years. This speed surprises people who think of ecosystems as slow and geological in their pace of change, but the living web responds quickly to loss. Herbivore populations begin to swell within a single breeding season. Overgrazing of vegetation follows shortly after. Soil erosion, reduced water quality, and declining biodiversity can all be measured within a handful of years. The system does not wait to notice what is missing. It begins answering the absence almost immediately, in the only language it knows: change. Trophic cascades teach, more vividly than almost any other ecological concept, that every thread in the web of life is connected, and that pulling one thread, removing one species, silencing one voice in the long conversation of an ecosystem, shifts the entire tapestry. The beauty of the web is also its vulnerability. Its resilience is purchased at the cost of a deep interdependence, a mutual reliance so complete that the health of a river can be read in the presence of a wolf on a hillside miles away. To understand trophic cascades is to understand that the living world is not a collection of separate things. It is a single thing, breathing together, moving together, held together by the presence of its most essential voices. Apex predators shape ecosystems not just through killing, but through the behavioral changes their presence induces in prey animals, a phenomenon ecologists have named the ecology of fear. It is a concept that expands our understanding of what a predator is and does, moving beyond the moment of the hunt to encompass the long shadow it casts over every hour of every day in its prey's life. Fear is not merely a response to immediate danger. In the ecological sense, it is a force, a reorganizing pressure that shapes where animals go, when they rest, how long they feed, which routes they travel. Fear, in a living system, is not the opposite of balance. It is one of its instruments. Prey animals change where they graze, how long they stay in one place, and even how they organize themselves socially based on the presence of a nearby predator, even one they cannot see. An elk near a river where wolves have been will not linger there the way it might in a wolf-free landscape. A deer in a meadow adjacent to mountain lion territory will keep to the edges, keeping trees at its back. These behavioral adjustments may seem small in isolation, but across an entire population and a large landscape, they add up to something vast, a redistribution of animal presence across the terrain that prevents any single area from being grazed to exhaustion, that keeps the green world turning over and renewing. In Yellowstone, elk would not linger near rivers when wolves were present, and in that avoidance, they gave the willows and aspens along the banks time to grow back after decades of overgrazing. The willows did not know they were being protected. They simply grew as they had always wanted to grow into the space that the elk's absence from the riverbank created. The wolves never touched the willows. They never needed to. They needed only to be present, only to move through the landscape and leave behind them the scent and the possibility of pursuit. The ecology of fear works like that, invisibly, at a distance, through the medium of another creature's caution. Studies have shown that even the scent or the recorded sound of a predator can significantly reduce the feeding activity of prey animals in a given area. No predator present, no actual threat, just the suggestion of one. Researchers have played recorded wolf howls near elk herds and watched the animals move away from the sound, become more vigilant, and spend less time with their heads down, grazing. The same response has been documented with big cat scent in areas with no big cats. The living system is attuned to these signals at a level deeper than conscious thought, a kind of ancient attentiveness written into the body itself, responding to the ghost of danger with the same urgency as to the real thing. The ecology of fear distributes animal behavior across a landscape, preventing any single area from being overgrazed or depleted, turning the anxiety of prey into a form of conservation. Where the predator is present or recently was, prey animals move on. Where it is absent or distant, they gather and feed freely. This shifting pattern of presence and absence traces itself across the land like a tide, pulling herbivores toward areas of lower risk and away from areas of higher risk in a continuous responsive dance. The land benefits from this tide. It gets the rest it needs, the reprieve from grazing that allows roots to deepen and canopy to close and soil to rebuild itself beneath a layer of fallen leaves and quiet. Some researchers call the cumulative effect of predator-induced behavioral shifts the landscape of fear, a term for the invisible topography of risk that prey animals navigate every moment of their lives. Just as a physical landscape has hills and valleys, this psychological landscape has zones of high danger and low danger, places where an animal moves quickly and places where it lingers. The landscape of fear is not static. It shifts with the seasons, with the time of day, with the movement of predator populations across a territory. Prey animals read it the way sailors once read the stars, not with their eyes exactly, but with something deeper than sight, with the full embodied knowledge of what it means to be prey. Deer in North America show measurable physiological stress responses, including elevated cortisol levels and altered reproductive timing, in areas where mountain lions are known to live, even in the absence of any direct encounter. The body of the deer responds to the possibility of the lion as if the threat were real and present, because in the long span of evolutionary time, it always has been. This hormonal response is not weakness, it is the deer's inheritance from every ancestor that survived by staying alert, by keeping the mountain lion in mind even in moments of calm. The ghost of the predator lives in the body of the prey, keeping it cautious, keeping it moving, keeping the landscape alive with that ancient, necessary dance. The fear of apex predators is so ecologically powerful that some scientists argue it is just as important as the actual act of predation in maintaining ecosystem balance, that what the predator does without hunting is as significant as what it does while hunting. This is a quiet revolution in ecological thinking. The idea that presence itself is a management tool, that the shadow of the predator shapes the world as surely as its teeth. If this is true, and the evidence increasingly suggests that it is, then the loss of an apex predator from an ecosystem removes not just a hunter, but a fear, and with that fear goes a vast, invisible architecture of behavioral balance that nothing else can replace. More than 75% of the world's apex predator species are currently in decline due to habitat loss, direct hunting, persecution by humans who fear for their livestock, and the cascading effects of a world that is changing faster than evolution can answer. The summit of every food web on Earth is under pressure, pressed from below by the shrinking of wild places, pressed from above by the weight of a human civilization that has not yet fully learned to make room for the things that hold the living world together. The great predators are not disappearing dramatically. They are diminishing quietly, range by range, territory by territory, the way a voice grows faint in a room that is slowly filling with other sounds. Lions have lost more than 80% of their historic range in Africa over the last century, retreating before the advancing edge of farmland and human settlement into shrinking islands of protected land. 100 years ago, lions lived across virtually all of sub-Saharan Africa and into parts of North Africa, the Middle East, and even India. Today, their presence is concentrated in a fraction of that territory, in parks and reserves separated from one another by human landscapes that lions cannot safely cross. They have not failed. They have been compressed, pressed into smaller and smaller spaces by a world that is increasingly organized around human need and has not yet found the language to include theirs. There are fewer than 4,000 wild tigers left on Earth across all subspecies, a number so small it can be held in the mind all at once, unlike the numbers we use for stars or grains of sand. A century ago, there were perhaps 100,000. The decline happened in the span of a single human lifetime, which is to say it happened quickly, which is to say it was a choice, made in policy and in silence, in the absence of protection and the presence of poaching, in the clearing of forests that tigers needed and the fragmentation of landscapes that had once allowed them to range freely across the continent of Asia. 4,000 is not nothing, but it is very nearly not enough. Great white sharks are classified as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List. Their global population has declined significantly due to overfishing, bycatch in commercial fishing gear, and the shark fin trade. An animal whose lineage stretches back 16 million years, that has outlasted every mass extinction the planet has thrown at the living world, now faces a threat that no geological event has yet posed. A single species that hunts faster than populations can recover. The ocean is quieter without them than it appears from the surface. The absence of a top predator rarely announces itself loudly. It spreads through the web in whispers, in gradual shifts that take years to name and decades to reverse. Wolves were completely eradicated from most of the continental United States by the mid-20th century through government-sanctioned hunting, trapping, and poisoning programs designed to protect livestock and reduce competition with human hunters. It was a systematic campaign, thorough and deliberate, that silenced a voice that had shaped North American ecosystems for tens of thousands of years. The last wolves in Yellowstone were killed in the 1920s. For 70 years, the park existed without them, and during those decades, the consequences of their absence wrote themselves quietly into the vegetation along every riverbank and into the behavior of every herd that moved without pressure through an ecosystem that had lost its crown. The loss of apex predators is part of a broader ecological crisis that scientists call defaunation, the emptying of animals from ecosystems across the planet. It is considered one of the most serious environmental challenges of our time, a companion to climate change and habitat loss in the triad of threats facing the living world. Defaunation is not extinction alone. It includes the local disappearance of species from places they once inhabited, the thinning of populations below the threshold at which they can perform their ecological functions, the quieting of a landscape that was once loud with life. An ecosystem undergoing defaunation does not look dead. It looks diminished, functional but hollowed, like a song played on fewer and fewer instruments. When apex predators disappear, ecosystems become dominated by mid-level predators in a process ecologists call mesopredator release, a phrase for the unchecked proliferation of the animals that the apex predator had been holding in balance. Coyotes, raccoons, foxes, ravens, and other mid-level hunters and omnivores expand rapidly into the space the apex predator leaves behind, freed from the competition and predation pressure that once governed their numbers. These expanding populations can dramatically reduce the diversity and abundance of the smaller animals and birds beneath them, triggering their own cascade of consequences downward through the web. The removal of the top does not leave the rest of the pyramid intact. It sets off a slow collapse through every layer below. Mesopredator release causes a cascade of overpopulation at mid-levels. Coyotes, foxes, and other carnivores proliferate, and the pressure they bring to bear on smaller animals, nesting birds, and ground-dwelling mammals intensifies. Studies in the eastern United States have documented dramatic declines in songbird populations in areas where the apex predators that once suppressed coyote numbers have been removed. The songbirds do not know about the missing apex predator. They know only that more coyotes are appearing, that more nests are being raided, that more fledglings are not surviving their first weeks. The chain of consequence does not announce itself. It simply moves through the system quietly and completely until someone stops to trace it back to its beginning. The disappearance of large predators from an ecosystem is associated with increased prevalence of disease among prey species, because sick and weakened animals that would once have been selectively culled by predators are now surviving long enough to spread illness through their populations. Predators are not merely hunters. They are a kind of immune system for their ecosystems, removing the animals most likely to carry and transmit disease before that disease can spread. In their absence, illness moves more freely through herds and flocks. Populations accumulate genetic and immunological vulnerabilities, and outbreaks that would once have been checked naturally require costly human interventions instead. The predator's gift to the prey goes beyond the balance of their numbers. It reaches into the health of their bodies. Shark fin soup, a dish consumed in parts of Asia as a symbol of status and celebration, has driven the removal of millions of sharks from ocean ecosystems, contributing to measurable declines in reef and coastal marine health across vast stretches of the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Sharks are caught for their fins alone, their bodies discarded at sea. It is an extraordinary transaction, the dismantling of an ecological role that took hundreds of millions of years to evolve, exchanged for a bowl of broth in which the fin itself has no flavor. The soup is thickened with the fin, flavored with other ingredients. What it costs the ocean cannot be measured in any currency that a menu would recognize. Polar bears face not hunting pressure, but climate pressure. The slow, accelerating disappearance of the sea ice they depend on to hunt the seals that are their primary food source. As the Arctic warms at a rate roughly 4 times faster than the global average, the ice retreats earlier in spring and returns later in autumn, shortening the hunting season on which the bear's entire caloric strategy depends. Bears that cannot accumulate enough fat during the ice season face starvation during the open water months. Cubs born to undernourished mothers are smaller, less resilient, less likely to survive their first years. The polar bear does not face a predator. It faces the accumulated consequence of a world that warmed while it was trying to rest. Conservation scientists now consider the protection of apex predators one of the highest leverage actions available to preserve entire ecosystems at once, because a single protected apex predator species can cascade its benefits through every level of the food web below it, generating returns in biodiversity, water quality, carbon sequestration, and disease resistance that no other single conservation action can match. To protect the wolf is to protect the songbird. To protect the shark is to protect the reef. To protect the jaguar is to protect the river. The apex predator is not merely one species among many. It is the species through which the health of all the others must pass, the single point of leverage on which the whole living architecture balances. The reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone National Park in 1995 is considered one of the greatest conservation success stories in American history, a moment when a decision made around a conference table sent ripples through an entire mountain ecosystem and transformed scientific understanding of what restoration can accomplish. 14 wolves. That is all it took to begin the change. 14 animals released into 350,000 acres of wilderness, watched by biologists who had spent years preparing for this moment and could not entirely predict what it would bring. What it brought was the slow, astonishing return of a world that had been quietly diminishing for 70 years, beginning to remember what it had been. Within 2 decades of wolf reintroduction, Yellowstone's biodiversity had measurably increased, more plant species colonizing the stabilized riverbanks, more songbird species nesting in the recovering willows and aspens, more beaver colonies building ponds in the tributaries, healthier and cleaner rivers supporting more fish. Scientists who had studied the park before and after documented changes at every level of the ecosystem, from the microorganisms in the soil to the raptors soaring above the valley. None of these changes required any direct human intervention beyond the original reintroduction. The wolves did the rest, simply by being present, simply by hunting, simply by making the elk move. The living world did what living worlds do when the crown is restored. It healed. Sea otter reintroduction programs along the Pacific coast of North America have helped restore kelp forest ecosystems across hundreds of miles of coastline, bringing back the dense, waving underwater forests that shelter thousands of species and absorb carbon from the water above them. Where otters have returned, the transformation has been visible within years. Urchin populations decline, kelp grows back in long, golden curtains, fish diversity increases, seals return, harbour seals haul out on rocks they had abandoned when the food supply collapsed. The ocean does not take long to remember its former abundance, given half a chance to return to it. The otter, eating its daily ration of urchins in the morning sun, is giving it that chance. In parts of Europe, wolves have been naturally recolonizing countries, Germany, France, Italy, Poland and others, after centuries of absence, spreading west and south from strongholds in Eastern Europe and gradually reclaiming parts of their ancient range. Wherever they have returned, researchers have begun to document the early signs of trophic recovery. Deer and wild boar populations becoming more wary and mobile, vegetation recovering along stream beds, small predators adjusting their behavior in response to the new presence at the top of the hierarchy. Europe is large and fractured and loud with human activity. But in the places where the wolf has returned, the land has begun, slowly and tentatively, to remember what it once was before the silence. Lion reintroduction programs in South Africa have helped restore balance in private reserves and national parks where antelope populations had grown beyond the carrying capacity of the land. where the grass had been grazed too thin and the soil was beginning to show through in bare patches, where the overabundance of prey had hollowed out the vegetation that everything else depended on. With lions returned, antelope and zebra began to move differently, choosing their grazing sites with a new caution, spending less time in the open, keeping closer to cover. Within years, the vegetation began to recover. The grass grew taller. The bare patches closed over. The reserve began to look again like a place where everything belonged. Rewilding, the practice of reintroducing apex predators and allowing ecosystems to self-regulate without intensive human management, is one of the fastest growing fields in conservation science, built on the insight that nature, given the right elements, tends toward complexity and abundance. Instead of managing ecosystems piece by piece, rewilding works at the level of the whole, restoring the crown and trusting the cascade to follow. It is a philosophy as much as a practice, rooted in a kind of humility, the acknowledgement that living systems are smarter than management plans, that the web knows how to rebuild itself when its essential threads are returned, and that the most powerful thing a human can sometimes do for the natural world is to step back and let it breathe. The Rewilding Europe initiative has helped restore lynx, bear and wolf populations across multiple countries as part of a coordinated effort to allow large natural areas to recover their ecological complexity and resilience. The initiative works with local communities, governments and landowners to create the conditions in which large predators can return and persist, addressing not just the biological requirements of the animals, but the human concerns and traditions that have historically made coexistence difficult. It is patient, careful, long-term work, the kind that measures success in decades rather than quarters. And in the places where it has taken root, the land is beginning to answer, with the sound of wolves in the night, with the tracks of lynx in morning snow, with the slow return of something ancient and necessary. When apex predators return to an ecosystem, prey animals begin to move differently almost immediately. And as their movement changes, plant communities restructure accordingly, sometimes within just a few years. The prey animal does not need to be taught that the predator has returned. It senses the signs, the scent marks, the sounds, the glimpsed shape at the edge of the forest, and ancient behavioral programs, encoded in its nervous system over millions of years of coevolution, activate in response. The animal becomes more cautious, it moves more, it grazes differently. And in the new pattern of its movement, the land finds its rest, and the plants find their growth, and the recovery begins, not from the top down exactly, but from the fear outward, radiating through the system like warmth from a fire. In Mozambique's Gorongosa National Park, the ecological recovery that followed the restoration of lion and leopard populations after the civil war that had devastated them has been one of the most carefully monitored examples of apex predator recovery in Africa. During the war, wildlife was heavily poached. Large predator populations collapsed. Herbivore populations initially also collapsed, then, without predators, began to recover and overgraze. Vegetation declined. The park that had once been called the place where the gods played was silent and diminished. The return of predators began a slow reversal of that silence, measured in prey behavior, in vegetation recovery, in the return of bird species that had not been recorded there in decades. The park remembered itself, the way living things remember, through the bodies of everything they have ever contained. Apex predator recovery is sometimes called ecological healing by the scientists who study it, a phrase that reaches beyond the clinical language of population dynamics and trophic cascades towards something that feels more accurate to what is actually happening. When a predator returns to an ecosystem it once shaped, the system does not merely reorganize. It recovers something that was lost. A rhythm, a wholeness, a quality of aliveness that diminished with the predator's absence and returns, slowly and imperfectly, with its return. The language of healing is intentional. It implies that the ecosystem was injured, that something real was taken from it, and that restoration is not merely a technical achievement, but a kind of repair, the careful, patient mending of something that was broken and wanted to be whole. Tyrannosaurus rex was one of the most powerful apex predators ever to walk the surface of the earth, an animal of almost incomprehensible force, with a bite force estimated at over 12,000 pounds per square inch, the most powerful of any terrestrial animal ever measured. It stood nearly 20 feet tall and reached lengths of 40 feet, moving through the forests and floodplains of late Cretaceous North America with a weight that left depressions in the earth that could still be found 66 million years later. It is the apex predator of our imagination as much as of its time, the shape we reach for when we want to picture something at the absolute summit of the possible, something beyond which the food chain cannot climb. Long before T-Rex ruled the land, the seas of the late Cretaceous were dominated by Mosasaurus, a marine reptile that could grow to 50 feet in length and hunted with a ferocity that made it the apex predator of an ocean that no longer exists. It was not a dinosaur, it was a lizard, the most successful lizard in the history of the world, with a double-hinged jaw that could expand to swallow prey whole and a body shaped by the sea into something fluid and terrible. It hunted other marine reptiles, large fish and sharks, including the sharks that were then the ocean's other dominant predators. In the deep time of the Cretaceous, two kinds of ancient hunger shared the sea between them, each one the other's only true equal. Megalodon, the largest shark ever to live, was the apex predator of ancient oceans from roughly 23 to 3 million years ago, a creature estimated to have reached lengths of 50 to 60 feet, with teeth the size of a human hand. It hunted whales, the largest prey animals in the history of the sea, pursuing them through warm coastal waters with a patience and power that restructured the behavior of every other large marine animal in its world. Its extinction approximately 3 million years ago is thought to have coincided with the cooling of the oceans and the decline of the warm water whale populations it depended on. It did not die because it failed. It died because its world changed around it, as all worlds eventually do. Saber-toothed cats, like Smilodon fatalis, were the apex predators of the last ice age in the Americas, heavy-bodied, powerful, and equipped with canine teeth that could reach 11 inches in length, curving downward like the blades of ceremonial daggers. They hunted the megafauna of the Pleistocene, giant ground sloths, prehistoric horses, ancient bison many times the size of modern ones, prey so large that coordinated hunting may have been necessary to bring them down. Smilodon was not a fast runner. It was an ambush predator, patient and powerful, lying in wait for something vast and unsuspecting and then committing to a single decisive moment that everything in its body was built for. The terror birds of South America, large flightless predators of the genus Forus racidi, were the apex predators of Patagonian grasslands for millions of years following the extinction of the dinosaurs, filling the niche that large mammalian predators occupied on other continents. They stood up to 10 feet tall, had hooked beaks capable of shattering bone, and ran at speeds that made escape difficult for all but the swiftest prey. They were the dominant land predators of a continent that was, for tens of millions of years, an island, and they evolved in isolation into something that filled the summit of every food web in their world, unchallenged, extraordinary, and as perfectly suited to their time as any creature that has ever lived. Entelodon, sometimes called the hell pig, was a massive, powerful omnivore that dominated ancient grasslands across Europe and Asia during the Eocene and Oligocene epochs, roughly 40 to 20 million years ago. Recent dental analysis suggests it was primarily a scavenger and opportunistic feeder rather than an active apex predator, a prehistoric giant hyena pig that bullied other carnivores away from kills and consumed whatever the landscape made available, from carcasses to roots to smaller animals it could catch. Whether it was a true apex predator or a dominant top scavenger remains debated among paleontologists. What is certain is that nothing in its world was comfortable with its presence, and that it occupied the summit of its ecosystem by force of size and fearlessness alone. Ancient crocodilians grew to lengths exceeding 40 feet and were among the dominant apex predators of the Cretaceous period, enormous creatures that patrolled the rivers and estuaries of a world still hot from the breath of the dinosaurs. Sarcosuchus imperator, sometimes called supercroc, may have reached 40 feet in length and weighed as much as 8 tons, capable of ambushing dinosaurs at the water's edge with a force that modern crocodiles, themselves extraordinary, can only approximate. The crocodilian body plan has proven so effective that it has changed very little in 200 million years, a design refined to near perfection in the Triassic and maintained through every extinction event since, patient and low and endlessly effective. Apex predators have shaped the course of evolution on Earth. Prey animals evolved speed, camouflage, herd behavior, complex social structures, and the neurological capacity for fear itself in direct response to being hunted across geological time. The cheetah is fast because something once needed to be able to catch it. The wildebeest runs in herds because there was once something worth running from. The rabbit's heart hammers at the shadow of a hawk because 1,000,000 generations of rabbits survived by having a heart that hammered, and the ones whose hearts were slow did not pass that slowness on. The predator is written into the body of the prey, and the prey is written into the predator, teaching it to be faster, smarter, more patient, more attuned to the world through which it moves. The extinction of Ice Age megafauna, mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, woolly rhinoceroses, and many others, is partially linked to the disruption of predator-prey relationships that had coexisted for millions of years. As human hunters spread across previously uninhabited continents and the great Ice Age predators declined, the balance that had governed these enormous populations was lost. The megafauna had evolved in the presence of their predators and had not evolved the wariness necessary to respond to a new and unfamiliar hunter. The silence that followed the end of the megafauna was not just the silence of extinct animals, it was the silence of the ecosystems they had shaped, grasslands and forests that lost their shapers and have never fully recovered. Healthy ecosystems with intact apex predator populations are more resistant to disease outbreaks, invasive species, and the disturbances of a changing climate. More resilient, more adaptive, more capable of absorbing shocks without losing their essential character. The presence of a complete food web with a functioning crown creates a kind of ecological redundancy. Multiple pathways through which energy and nutrients can flow, multiple checks and balances that prevent any single disruption from cascading through the entire system. An ecosystem with its apex predators intact is like a piece of music played by a full orchestra. Richer, more complex, more capable of recovering from a missed note without losing the whole composition. A study examining 31 different ecosystems around the world found that the presence of apex predators consistently correlated with greater biodiversity at every level of the food web. More plant species, more herbivore species, more small predator species, more insect species, more bird species. The relationship held across biomes, across continents, across the full variety of ecosystems the researchers examined. It held in forests and in grasslands, in freshwater and in marine systems. Wherever the top predator was present and healthy, the web below it was more diverse, more robust, more alive. The apex predator does not merely occupy the summit, it builds the mountain beneath it, stone by stone, through the cascading pressure of its presence. Indigenous peoples across the world have long understood the sacred role of apex predators in the living systems they share. Wolves, eagles, jaguars, bears, and lions appear in the creation stories, spiritual traditions, and ecological knowledge of cultures on every inhabited continent. This understanding was not merely metaphorical or symbolic, it was practical, observed, and accumulated over thousands of years of living within the web rather than outside it, a form of ecological knowledge as rigorous in its way as any scientific study, built from a quality of attention to the living world that modern culture has largely forgotten. The predator was sacred because it was necessary. Those who lived closest to it understood this with a clarity that science is only now beginning to confirm. The wolf is sacred in numerous Native American traditions, seen not as a destroyer, but as a teacher, a keeper of balance, a relative whose ways of moving through the world contain lessons for human communities as well as ecological ones. In Lakota tradition, the wolf is a symbol of loyalty and family. In Anishinaabe teaching, the wolf and the human are brothers, their fates intertwined since the beginning of the world. These traditions did not arise from romanticism, they arose from generations of observation, from watching what the wolf did to the land and the herds and the rivers, and understanding, in language that was spiritual because it had to be large enough to hold what they had seen, that the wolf was not separate from the health of the world. It was one of its authors. In Hindu tradition, the tiger is the vehicle of the goddess Durga, the divine force of preservation and protection, the fierce love that maintains the balance of the cosmos against the forces of chaos and destruction. To mount the tiger is to wield the power that keeps the world in order. The image is not accidental. In a culture that has lived alongside tigers for thousands of years, that has watched what happens to forests where tigers persist and forests where they disappear. The tiger's role as a keeper of balance was not merely observed but mythologized, elevated to the divine level that important truths often require, given a goddess to carry them so they would not be forgotten in the ordinary business of human life. Rewilding the world scientists now speak of rewilding on a global scale as one of the most viable and cost-effective paths to addressing biodiversity loss and stabilizing a changing climate, with apex predator reintroduction at its center as the strategy most likely to generate cascading benefits through entire ecosystems without requiring continuous intensive human management. The vision is ambitious: corridors of rewilded land connecting existing protected areas, large predators moving through them, trophic cascades rebuilding complexity and carbon storage, rivers running cleaner through stabilized banks, soils deepening with returning root systems. It is a vision of the world not managed but restored, not controlled but trusted, given back the things it lost and watched to see what it remembers. A fully intact food web, with apex predators at its crown, sequesters more carbon, produces cleaner water, and supports more life than any degraded system ever could. The carbon sequestration alone is significant. Through trophic cascades, the presence of apex predators increases the density and diversity of vegetation, which stores carbon in wood and root and soil. Through the behavioral changes they induce in prey, predators keep herbivores moving, allowing vegetation to regrow and deepen its root systems, pulling more carbon from the air and holding it in the ground. The living world, when whole, is one of the most powerful climate-stabilizing forces on Earth. And at the center of that wholeness, keeping everything in motion, stands the apex predator. The presence of an apex predator in a healthy ecosystem is, in a sense, proof that the land itself is well, a living signal that the web is intact, that energy is flowing through every level, that the balance is being kept. Scientists use the presence and health of apex predator populations as indicators of overall ecosystem health, surrogates for the complexity and richness of the entire system beneath them. When the predator thrives, the system is almost certainly thriving with it. When the predator declines, the signal travels downward through the web as a warning, an invitation to look more closely, to ask what has been lost. The apex predator does not merely live in the ecosystem. It carries news of it, the way a root carries news of the soil through the length of a living tree. We are part of that web too. And in learning to protect the creatures at the top, we are learning slowly and with great care to protect everything beneath them, including ourselves. The health of the living world is not separate from human health and human flourishing. It is its foundation, the soil from which all culture, all abundance, all possibility grows. To restore the wolf to the mountain is to restore the river. To restore the shark to the reef is to restore the sea. And in restoring them, we restore something in ourselves as well, a sense of belonging to a world that is larger and older and more alive than anything we have built, a world that asks only that we remember what we are a part of, and choose with open eyes and open hands to protect it. And so the web remains, predator and prey, hunter and hunted, each one a thread in something older than memory, older than language, older than sleep itself. Tonight, somewhere in the dark, a wolf is breathing on a hillside. A shark is gliding through cold water. A jaguar is still among the roots of an ancient tree. They are keeping the world in balance, quietly, faithfully, the way night keeps the stars. You are part of that world too. Rest now. Everything is held.